Welcome into BuzzLine, the weekly show all about Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket athletics. We're at Buffalo's Cafe, Cumming, Georgia. Come on out and see us at exit 14 off of Georgia 400. And we're just down the road as we talk Georgia Tech sports talk each and every week. I'm John Rawl with this fellow sitting beside me, Jonathan Leifheit, GoJackets.com. And it was a rough weekend to be a Georgia Tech fan as the Jackets fell to a ho-hum Virginia Cavalier team.
Yeah, ho-hum is pretty much right. They were been pretty much had their butts handed to them the last few weeks against, I think Pitt did a pretty good job of that. Carolina put a pretty good run on them. And then, of course, BC just ran all over them. So they had started out 5-1 and then had dropped a couple and weren't looking all that great. Well, until they ran into the Jackets, that is, and we're looking a lot better as a result of that game. Actually gave Virginia bowl eligibility, which I don't think they've had in, I don't even know how many years it's been since they've been to a bowl. So it's been a while. Bronco Mendenhall in his second year at UVA looks like he's got them kind of headed on the right path. And there was a game that was absolutely positively there for the taking by the Jackets, and they could not seem to capitalize and take advantage of some of the things that happened. And, the defense gave up, again, a late touchdown to let the Cavaliers go ahead. And then the offense couldn't execute on a kind of a minute-and-a-half drill.
Yep. 40-36, 4-point loss for the Jackets there in Charlottesville. We'll walk through it. We'll discover what in the world happened and how the Jackets picked themselves off the mat as Virginia Tech is the next opponent on the schedule. This is BuzzLine from CRM Sports. And welcome back to Buffalo's Cafe Cumming, where we're talking Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket athletics here in this all-white and gold restaurant. And 27 televisions await you if you come to this particular location of Buffalo's Cafe. And so as you make your football plans for the fall, keep Buffalo's Cafe in mind. I'm with Jonathan Leifheit of GoJackets.com. My name is John Rawl. We want to thank you for once again tuning us in via Facebook Live, via our radio network, via GoJackets.com, the premier website for Georgia Tech fans. Is there even another website out there doing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't think the official website. I don't even know if Georgia Tech has one.
Oh, they do. It's RamblinWreck.com. Let's not go too far.
You'll plug them. But GoJackets.com is what you all need to remember because it is the premier source for Georgia Tech sports talk and information and even a little gossip. And I was looking at the Hive Sports Center on GoJackets.com earlier. Lots of people talking after Georgia Tech falls to the Virginia Cavaliers 40-36, a tough one for the Jackets as Virginia scores a winning touchdown with 1:22 left in the game.
Yeah, they did, and I think the horrible thing about this is the Jackets had actually staked themselves out to a really, really nice lead to kind of open the second half. Taquan Marshall took, I think it was the first play of the second half, runs it for 78 yards. The very next play from scrimmage, Kurt Benkert throws an interception to Bruce Jordan-Swilling, and guess what he does? He takes it into the end zone, and that puts Georgia Tech up 15 points, and we're roughly 30 seconds into the second half. So the Tech is up 15 points, and then Virginia proceeds to go on and outscore the Jackets from that point on in the second half, 27-8 in order to win. So this is a game that absolutely, positively the Jackets should have taken. It was there for the taking, and somehow or another they managed to find a way to blow it.
Well, here at Buffalo's, prior to getting started, and it's a good thing you weren't here at the time because I heard someone who's a fan of the other so-called major program in the state of Georgia.
There are no others.
Okay. I said so-called.
I'm in denial.
Okay. He was saying Ted Roof should be fired. Of course, so this isn't a Jacket person. This is a Georgia fan. But I'm sure, there's really, it's inexcusable to fall apart, not only in this game, but you could even go back to, and we were gentle on the defense, but honestly, they really cost Georgia Tech, I know, in the Tennessee game.
They did on that one. On this one, I'm probably going to give them at least a little bit of a break because, in my opinion, where most of the breakdowns were really more around, it was really more about the special teams. You can kind of go back and look at they spotted Virginia. First off, let's talk about the first half. They scored 13 points. Well, you know what? Almost all 13 of that came in the form of special teams blunders. They had a kick return that was 7 points. They had a attempt at an onside kick that they did not execute properly, gave Virginia good field position. And they had a second kick return that gave them good field position. 13 points right there. Then you look at the second half. Their punter kept placing the ball inside deep inside Georgia Tech territory. Our punter could not seem to get out of there, and they also managed to get a little bit more return yardage. So, in my opinion, if you wanted to kind of pin this loss anywhere, you can't go. It's the defense. Now, we did, in fact, have the lead, and they could have made a play there at the end. The defense certainly could, but, they put themselves in that position by playing bad as a team. Offense, 2 turnovers. Taquan Marshall throws two picks. We talked about special teams and what they did, and then, of course, the defense, when they absolutely positively needed them to step up, they didn't. So I'm not going to blame Ted Roof solely for this, and
okay.
Certainly, I'm not happy about the late game folds that we've had. It seems like if the other team has the ball with under 2 minutes to go and a chance to take the lead, they usually do. So, that's certainly on Ted for 2 minutes. But at this point, you have to look at this as a team loss, not just a loss by the defense.
Ted Roof's future at Georgia Tech, is it in jeopardy?
I don't think so. If there's one thing, they finally started getting some consistency, and I'm actually pretty happy with overall the way they played, except for the 2 minute drill. And not only that, Ted's done a good job of getting some better talent. I think this group is going to get better. Bruce Jordan Swilling has had to play because of Brant Mitchell. He looked terrific on Saturday. He looks like the linebacker of the future for the Jackets. He had that 27-yard return. Mm-hmm. And then you look at some of the other players, and all in all, I think if they can get their secondary kind of a little bigger size and get some things squared away, I think they'll be okay. I don't know that it will ever be a shutdown defense like a la Clemson or Alabama, but I think they don't necessarily need to be that, but they can be okay.
It sounds like I'm coming after Ted Roof in a legal case this week on BuzzLine, but I'm just kind of echoing what a lot of people are saying.
Yep,
Does he get a little bit more slack because he's an alum of Georgia Tech?
At this point, no.
Like flack, I should say. Or
I would
slack
say
is good too.
There was probably a time when he did, and actually it's interesting because Ted was previously the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. I don't know if you realize this, back in 1999. And he was handed a pretty poor card at that point, where he was handed basically a freshman-laden defense and told, make chicken salad out of chicken stuff.
And he did well enough to get the job. Well, Duke ended up hiring him as head coach.
Duke, so that was as a result of Bill O'Brien was hired as the head coach at Duke, and then he failed pretty miserably there. And that was probably more on the Duke admin than it was on O'Brien, because we've seen he's succeeded since then. And guess who his defensive coordinator was?
Mr. Roof.
Absolutely. And then they fired O'Brien and put Roof up as the interim. He did well enough as an interim, and then he did not have a good tenure. And again, I blame that more on the Duke admin, because when Cutcliffe came in, they actually finally gave him some concessions and some resources to make things happen. So from that perspective, and if you look at his tenure at Auburn and Penn State since then, he's had some respectable defenses and done reasonably well. So certainly I think the biggest issue with this defense has been more about talent than anything else. That's partially on Ted, because he's one of the recruiters, but more so probably on Coach Johnson. Mm-hmm. Once you kind of get that, I think it'll be all right. We've seen some pretty solid play if they could just shore up that 2 minute drill.
Well, it's cost them, as we've seen throughout the season.
3 games.
This is a team now that's sitting at 4-4.
And you know what? They should be 7-1.
With the one loss coming to Clemson. Okay.
Flat out, they should be 7-1. And I guess it goes back to, as Herm Edwards talked about, well, you are what your record says you are, or what, maybe that was who was the guy at Jim, what's his name, down in the Saints. If you're 4-4, you're a 4-4 team, but they should be 7-1. Jim Mora, I think it was.
Mr. Playoffs.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you are what your record says you are, but they should certainly have a better record than they do. They have failed to close out 3 very winnable games with the lead late, and just had horrible luck and also horrible play. And there's nothing else you can say about it.
Well, it makes what was a promising season just kind of go in the garbage can, because I really thought after some of these wins mid-season that the Jackets had a real chance to, speaking of Jim Mora, end up in the playoffs.
Well, not necessarily the playoffs, but at least contend for the Coastal.
In the conversation.
Yeah, they could be in the Coastal conversation.
They could end up beating they could have ended up beating a Clemson team that was way up there. They could have beaten a Georgia Bulldog team.
Well, that's still to come.
Well, I realize that, but I'm just saying if Georgia still was unbeaten and Georgia came in there with 1 loss, Georgia Tech rather, then and the Jackets win the ACC, they could be in the national playoff. I think a 2-loss team's going to get in there this year.
Yeah, it's very possible.
And it's probably going to be from the Big Ten, darn it.
Yeah, I don't know if any of them deserve that, though.
They don't, but there's a Big Ten bias.
If you say so.
Yeah, well, that keeps our listeners through the break, because that's where we're headed right now. When we come back, we're going to talk about this loss a little bit more to Virginia. Where do the Jackets go from here? What can they do to stop a Virginia Tech team that comes to Atlanta this week after being dismantled by the Miami Hurricanes? That one was a little bit of a shocker to many to see how well Miami played against the Hokies.
Yeah, that's a Miami team gaining some confidence and starting to play better. So they've taken those kind of miracles that they pulled out of their rear end and turned them into some confidence.
Yes, well, they did that, and we'll see where it goes. So we'll go to a quick break, come back, and talk more Jacket football. A little bit later, we've got some post-game audio from Charlottesville. This is BuzzLine from CRM Sports. We're back at Buffalo's Cafe, located in Cumming. Come by and see us as we record this show each week. Also, come to Buffalo's Cafe for Bash Night, where you get all-you-can-eat wings every Monday and Wednesday for $14.99. Have you ever had a chance to eat so much chicken, Jonathan, for less than $15?
I don't think I have. That's a lot of chicken.
That is. So come hungry and have a good time here at Buffalo's Cafe. Mr. Chicken Man himself, Jonathan Leifheit, joined me. That seems to be a recurring theme on this show. We talked about the place in Walhalla, South Carolina last week, but Buffalo's is the chicken to be found in all of Georgia for sure. Jonathan Leifheit, I'm John Rawl, and we're talking Georgia Tech football. The Jackets fall 40-36 to the Virginia Cavaliers. Georgia Tech now 4-4 in the 27 campaign, and what started out as a darn good season has now melted. Last week on the show, we could kind of point our finger to the quarterback, Taquan Marshall, and say, man, he just couldn't get the reads right, and that really hurt this team, and they lost to Clemson. What is your evaluation of Marshall after the Virginia game?
Well, he certainly played better than he did at Clemson, and part of that's because Virginia's not Clemson. But he did okay in terms of the run game, I think. Seems like we're struggling a bit to get to the outside game and relying a lot on that interior game with Benson. But he did better. Certainly did better. I think the worst part is we threw the ball 22 times, which is never good when a Paul Johnson team is having to throw the ball 22 times.
Did they really have to throw it that much?
You know, I don't think they did because a lot of that came early. Now, Virginia might have been given some things, but you know, if you're going to throw the ball 22 times, you've got to complete more than 6 of them. And that's exactly what happened. It just was way too many times. This offense is predicated on keeping on schedule, and that means making yards on first down, got to get 3 to 4, making yards on second down, got to get 3 to 4, and leaving yourself with third and 2, third and 3, third and 4, where it's makeable. And then if you don't make it and you're on the right side of the field, 4th and 1, 4th and 2 is acceptable. 22 times they dropped back, and 16 of those times they ended up with, an incomplete pass and another downs. And 2 of those times they also had an interception, which turned it over. So way too much passing, in my opinion. I felt like they could have relied on the run game a little bit more, done some more things that they didn't do. So I think when Coach Johnson reviews the film, he'll probably come back and say, I called too much passing.
Now, again, to give whoever a little bit of a shield here, those passes, incomplete passes, was that more on the quarterback or the receiver?
More on the quarterback, in my opinion.
Really?
I saw numerous times where, he bounced it into their feet, threw it over into the sideline, that type of thing. I actually thought the offensive line did an okay job of giving him time. Not always, but he did get time, more often than not. And I think he got sacked maybe twice, which is probably too many times. But, some of that was because he couldn't find an open receiver. But nonetheless, it was I think more on the quarterback. Still, wide receivers and the A-backs deserve some criticism. No separation. A lot of times they were covered because they couldn't get free of their defender. So I'm not going to throw Taquan completely under the bus. He's got some help from his teammates, and I think this goes to to the point earlier. This is not any one player, any one unit. This was a team loss across the board.
Yeah. Well, there were some bright spots in the game, and I guess one thing would be that Georgia Tech went into the locker room at half with a 1-point lead.
That should have been more. How do you? The kickoff return, they actually had the guy bottled up. He was in there, and then he, breaks free of a tackle and runs around the end. It almost looked like a carbon copy of that kickoff return that Pitt took back to the house against Georgia Tech. Had him bottled up on the sideline, and he managed to break free of a tackle, and all of a sudden he had a picket fence around the corner, and away he went.
Another thing to point out is late in the game, it looked like maybe the winning drive for Georgia Tech with a 33-yard pass to Ricky June, and with 3:10 left in the ball game, Tech took the lead.
Well, there was a part of me that when I saw that play happen, I was thinking to myself, get to the 1-yard line and fall down, because I could just see that how much time was going to be left on the clock, and I knew it was too much time, and it just felt to me like here we go again. The way that Virginia had been starting to move the ball, you just had that feeling that they probably were going to have their way with it. And sure enough, I wish that we would have fallen on the 1-yard line and run three plays and scored on the fourth one. That would have been optimal. That would have run out probably another 2 minutes and gotten us gotten the win.
Yeah, just one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda type deals. And
now normally you're never going to see a player who intentionally take a knee when they can go right into the end zone, but it just goes to show you kind of how much confidence at that point I had in the defense. So.
Look, I thought the same way in the Tennessee game. There was maybe a play call or so that you was like, let's get through this clock a little bit more, and we saw that bit Georgia Tech in the behind there in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium there to start the season. Georgia Tech, Virginia, this series it's hard to believe this. I know these two teams really didn't play prior to Tech entering the conference back in football in the early 80s, right?
Yeah.
But 20-19-1 is the all-time series record, Georgia Tech with a 1-game lead against Virginia. And I only bring that up because, my goodness, Virginia was horrible for so many of these 30, 40 years there.
Well, actually, I'll disagree with that. George Welsh took over there in the early 80s and turned them into a pretty good program. So for most of the time period where Tech played them in the 80s and in the 90s, they were a pretty darn good program. Now, once Welsh left after 2001, Al Groh and then Mike London, it hasn't been good. And then now they've got Bronco Mendenhall, who's got them coming back. So a lot of that, if you go back and look at the record and kind of how things played out, Virginia had a pretty good lead on Tech in terms of this series. Kind of entering when we hit the millennium, Virginia was up. It was only after the millennium that Tech kind of took over and has kind of controlled that. So it's been kind of a tale of the last 20 years in terms of getting that back on the right side of the ledger for Tech.
Well, I know you have a personal vendetta against Virginia.
No, not really.
Well, you should.
Oh, well, yeah, I probably should. But
and the reason? Up until about 5 years ago, the University of Virginia did not even have a marching band.
Oh, they used to have, actually, they kind of had what we call the scatter band is what they did have. They actually had a band up until then, and they were actually a pretty fun group.
Is it the Rice/Stanford style of bands?
Yes, it was. So they had that band. I'm not even sure exactly when. I think it's been longer than 5 years now. It's been probably in the 2000s. I think when Al Groh was there, they actually started that. a real quote marching band. Previously, they had scatter. They would wear jeans and they had orange vests with all kinds of paraphernalia on it, and they'd wear whatever hats. They would scatter, make a little formation, play a song, scatter, make another formation, play a song. Kind of fun group.
Don't let me forget Princeton also does.
Not to
the same
mention
thing.
they were a little. They always had a little off-color kind of attitude about it, so which I appreciate that. I mean, there's something for everyone, and now the band that they have is actually kind of a rather bland.
Okay. Well, of course, nobody's better than the Georgia Tech.
Absolutely, I would agree.
The
with that.
nickname of the Georgia Tech band is
the Georgia Tech band.
Okay, I never had heard of one. A lot of teams
we
have.
used to jokingly call ourselves the $1.98 Noise of the Southland.
Okay,
so that was one of them.
Was that in honor of Minnie Pearl?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And then
that's the price on her tag. Price tag on her hat. If you know who Minnie Pearl is, probably 99% of our audience does not. Sadly for you and I, we're over the hill.
I think you find more of our audience knows it than you might expect.
Okay, well, good. Thank you, audience, for Minnie Pearl. And in her honor, as we go to break on BuzzLine, you ready for this? Howdy! We'll be back.
Real good, John. Real good.
All right. Sorry. We have to have some fun on this show, especially when the team loses again.
Yep.
Thank you, audience. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As the computer does its spiraling out of control effect. I'm trying to get the audio lined up, but we'll get that here in this segment. We'll go ahead and get started back. Back we are. This is BuzzLine from CRM Sports with Jonathan Leifheit, GoJackets.com publisher. I'm John Rawl, and we're at Buffalo's Cafe, home of BuzzLine, and we have Buzz front and center as we always do here on our show, talking Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket athletics, where the word is always good, and that good word is?
To hell with Georgia.
Yes, always, and especially when they're the so-called number one team in the country.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, we'll take the fifth on that one. But here at Buffalo's Cafe, we have a wonderful environment that welcomes you with a great friendly wait staff and always ready to seat you right when you walk in the door, and we'll give you a great lineup of food, of which Jonathan and I will be digging into momentarily when the show wraps up. Georgia Tech falls on the road to Virginia 40-36, a loss that I didn't see coming.
Well, I warned about it, that they had to play well, and that Charlottesville has always been a bad place for us to play. But yeah, to your point, I didn't actually see the loss coming. I was just kind of concerned.
Okay. So we've kind of looked at it as being a complete team loss, and you harped on this earlier. Special teams, really more than any game thus far this year, was not good.
Well, I don't know that more than any other game, but, I mean, certainly the Tennessee game we can directly attribute to special teams. This game, I think we can, I said it's a team loss, but, boy, you can sure put a lion's share of the blame on special teams there as well. So, yeah, it was horrible. And from, kickoff coverage, 2 big returns, one of them for a touchdown. Seemed like, Presley Harvin, who has been fantastic, spectacular this year. I think he's second in the ACC in net punting, about 46 yards a punt. Did not have one of his better games. Now, I will say he wasn't bad. He was just not one of his better games. And then on top of that, their special teams was able to repeatedly pin Georgia Tech deep, one of which resulted in a safety. They were able to get the ball on down the ball on about the 2-yard line. Their punter did a great job. They had people down there, backed right up, landed on the 2 and died. Next play, Georgia Tech goes to run, has the mesh, balls gets bobbled, it ends up back in the end zone. Taquan Marshall fortunately falls on it, or it might not even been as close as it was. It would have been a touchdown. So, I mean, you can go back and say that was on the offense, but guess what? Special teams was the reason that ball was there in the first place. So, Brad Stewart had. We had 8 punts by the Virginia punter, And guess how many yards he had total return?
0.
Exactly.
Always a fair catch.
Well, not necessarily. Well, in some cases it was over his head. He couldn't return it. Other cases he had people breathing down his neck. He had to fair catch it. A lot of people are giving him crap about fair catching every ball, and there's probably some truth that he probably does have a few more that he could catch and run with. But you know what? A lot of the time it's because he's got people around him when he catches it, and if he were to not fair catch it, we'd end up with potential fumble. So punt returns in general this year have been horrible, and it's not just Brad. It's the blocking, it's the setting up the return, everything just a disaster.
Who are these punt and kick return personnel? Are they players that are playing offense and defense, or are they just on special teams?
Mostly, I would say it's a mix. There's a mix. There's some kind of specialists that stay on special teams that do things, and then you've got a mix. We just talked about Brad Stewart. Well, he's a wide receiver. Terrell Lewis is another guy. Sean Kagawa. I see the Austins out there. They play defense. A number of players. Corey Griffin, I've seen him out there. It just depends, but by and large, it's a group that there's probably split 50-50 between starters and kind of reserves and specialists. So
we have a comment here and question on our BuzzLine Facebook page. We want to thank we're going to give this guy our mentor status because his last name is Mentor.
Right.
Our mentor of the program is Keith Mentor, and these are his comments. Hopefully they're G-rated here, but we'll pass them along. 2 interceptions and 1 safety by Marshall. Is Jordan injured? That's question number 1 from Keith.
Yes. He actually was out for this game, not available for this game, so really the backup was not available. You may remember last week against Clemson, he went in there and started a drive, had to come out injured. I don't even think he made the trip to Virginia. So he was.
What's wrong?
Lower body injury of some sort. So he is out for the game.
Okay, well, Keith mentions that he did not see any mention of Jordan anywhere. So what gives? Coach Paul Johnson said after Clemson game that he wished he had put Jordan in a little sooner. Is Matthew in the doghouse or in the infirmary?
Infirmary. Good question. We already said in the infirmary. Okay. So from that perspective, but I will note that we had a front page story on GoJackets.com with the injury report that noted that Matthew Jordan would be out for the game.
Keith, you better be doing your homework. You better go to GoJackets.com. And when I say Keith, I'm talking about everybody.
Yep.
We love the questions, but no, we're picking on you. Good question. And if you have a question or comment here on our show, please go to our Facebook live broadcast or on our Facebook page at GT BuzzLine and fire away. Or anytime you're able to, you can call us at 803-816-1170, and we'll take the question via phone or text. You can text the number as well, 803-816-1170. So we appreciate that. And hopefully Keith was the recipient of our first show. We gave away a Buffalo's Wingman of the Week. And so, Keith, hopefully you received a nice card in the mail recently with a couple of free chicken wings.
Hopefully he did. If not,
I haven't heard from him, so he must have, because if he would not have received it, he would have probably been attacking me on Facebook, which is perfectly fine. You should. If we didn't hold up our end of the bargain. You had something you want to point out, sir?
Well, I was just looking at I was confirming that in the injury report that we had. Yes, David Curry. Actually, we talked about Terrell Lewis on special teams. He was gone. David Curry's been out all season. Matthew Jordan and Scott Morgan, who has also been out most of the season, were all declared out for the game.
Okay.
So.
Well, we're going to go into the locker room following the loss to Virginia and hear from Coach Paul Johnson. Jonathan, I know your staff, Rod McKenzie, working hard as always on GoJackets.com, able to track down Georgia Tech players, coaches, and the likes. And here's a little portion of Coach Johnson after the loss, 40-36 to the Hoos. And I'll add that in post-production.
All right,
Facebook Live. Sorry, you're not getting to hear Coach Johnson because I'm having a couple of issues that may be cleared up now.
I don't think you're out.
They can hear me, actually.
Okay.
It's kind of a weird thing. But, yes, we will get that to you via the podcast edition, which you need to find anyway on GoJackets.com and on Apple iTunes. So we'll come back to the show now. And that was Georgia Tech head football coach Paul Johnson post Virginia as the Jackets fall in a heartbreaker 40-36 to the Bronco Mendenhall-led Virginia Cavaliers. Kudos to Virginia. They've been through a lot in the last, as we said earlier, roughly since the millennium.
About the last 15 years, It's been pretty bad for them.
And he may have something going. We wish them well the rest of the way now that they've topped the Jackets.
No, I don't. I don't really care if they do well or not.
Well, I know they got Virginia Tech coming up, so we wish them well against them.
At this point, I don't
You
care.
hate Virginia Tech.
Well, I don't care about either one of them.
Okay, well, fine. Jonathan, whatever he says flies with me, so yes. Virginia, you can just go ahead and cancel the rest of your season. No bowl. That'll be fine with us.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it looks like they're going to a bowl. Georgia Tech, I'm not so sure about, but Virginia's going.
Yeah, speaking of that, Georgia Tech, with how many years now straight going to a bowl?
Well, one.
That's right. They had a horrible year. I see, I've already forgotten.
Well, yeah, that was a season worth forgetting, so, yeah.
Okay. Other than the kickoff, the kick from Florida State game, that was sorry about that, because Georgia Tech up until then had like one of the longest streaks.
They did. It was, I think, either second or third, tied with Georgia of all places, and then they lost that following 2015. And actually, it looks like the leader in that streak, Florida State, is well in danger of doing the same thing.
And we hope that happens.
I wouldn't mind that happening. I'd like to see them really suffer one year.
All right, well, we don't want you to suffer, fans of BuzzLine. We're going to take a break, come right back, and continue on with our Georgia Tech Sports Talk. This is BuzzLine from Buffalo's Cafe Cumming. We're back on BuzzLine from CRM Sports with Jonathan Leifheit, GoJackets.com. I'm John Rawl, and here at Buffalo's Cafe, we remind you of the great environment here with all the televisions, but also the beer selection here. They have 14 drafts, including local craft beers, available. Now, I know, Jonathan, we can't, down a bunch of beers when we do the show, but if we wanted to, we could.
Yeah, we'd have a lot to choose from, that's for sure.
Yes, we do. 14. I could drink one for every hour of the day.
And then some.
Yeah, exactly. I can do math, folks. I realize what I'm saying. Maybe I've been drinking. I am high on Dr. Pepper over here. Jonathan, the Jackets fall to Virginia. Now Virginia Tech looms on the schedule. Where do the Jackets go from here?
Well, so they have 3 games left. They are 4-4, and they've got to get two of those three games that's left in order to get to a bowl game. So you've got Virginia Tech, Duke, and Georgia. So right now, Virginia Tech got thumped pretty good by Miami. That's the Miami team that Tech played a lot better. They also got thumped pretty good by Clemson, and that's also a team I felt like Tech played better than Virginia Tech did as well. So from that perspective, this is a winnable game. I don't care what Virginia Tech's ranked. This is at home.
They're not going to be ranked, I wouldn't think.
Well, they were 13th coming out of this week. They played a top 10 Miami team. They'll still be in the top 20.
Okay.
Top 20. I would put them down around 20.
Okay.
It depends probably who else lost and whatnot, but nonetheless, I put them as a probably still top 20 team. So this is a winnable game. And I realize, Tech has kind of struggled to close teams out, but I feel like they will be in this game. They can win this game. They've got to make plays at the end of the game to do that. And then you go on the road and you've got Duke. You've got to get those next two because right now those wretched mutts from Athens are looking really good, and that is going to be an exceptionally tough game to play, especially because it's at Bobby Dodd Stadium. So it's not going to be an easy thing. So if they want to go to a bowl game, they better get the 2 wins on the next 2 games, or there's a good chance they're sitting at home.
Not that we want to talk too much about the Mutts, but do you predict they're going to be undefeated coming into Atlanta?
I'm not so sure. I feel like they haven't been tested much yet. I think Auburn, and I'm not sure where that game is, but that Auburn could give them a good run for their money.
It's going to be at Auburn. In fact, Georgia's the underdog from what I understand.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a good shot that Auburn could take them. We'll know a lot more about them, I think, after that game. That's probably their first and only test. They played South Carolina, who I don't think is any great shakes. this past weekend, and they did okay. They beat them, but they didn't dominate them like they have been other teams. So we'll kind of get a sense of them. They're a very good team, though. Don't get me wrong. Are they a number one? Are they an undefeated team? I'm a little skeptical on that at this point.
Well, if Georgia Tech somehow slips up in the next game or two and Georgia continues to win, unfortunately, as we've seen every year that these two teams play in Atlanta, you're going to see even more red and black in the stands, and you're going to see some Georgia Tech fans with some extra cash in their pocket.
Actually, I believe that tickets for that game have already been seen on StubHub going in the 4-digit range.
And some of those tickets are coming from Georgia Tech season ticket holders that are selling them.
Yep. Not happy about that.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I have a group of 7. Guess how many Georgia fans will be in that group of 7?
Do you have all 7 accounted for at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. How many?
0. There will be no dog fans in those seats.
So if somebody offered you $1 million.
Could not in good conscience do that.
But you could do it. Come on.
Nope.
You could sneak in. You can get them in.
What I guess I could do is take their money, report the tickets stolen, and then go sit in my seats.
That's a good plan.
There you go.
Well, we hope that it's as much white and gold in there as possible. That seems to be a recurring problem when those two teams get together every other year.
Well, particularly this year, I think it shows up red because red shows up better than on camera than it does than gold and white do. But I will tell you that this year will be a problem.
Yeah. If you had to guess, any clue when that game might kick off?
If traditionally it's been a noon or a 3:30. It'll be ABC. I think it probably kind of depends on some of the other games around it. I know that, for example, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State used to be on that same weekend. That will not be a competition.
I don't understand how that game happened this past weekend.
They actually intentionally pulled it from the fixed rotation and said let it fall where the computers say go and let them play.
Both schools said that.
Both schools agreed to that. Mostly because they were concerned about a rematch the following weekend in the Big 12 championship game.
Okay, well, that was very disturbing for traditionalists like myself to see this game.
Yep.
Not that I watch it that closely, because usually, honestly, Oklahoma State chokes every time they can do something good.
They find a way to do that.
Yeah, they hardly ever win.
Well, yeah. Not that Oklahoma's been that much better than them.
No, but Oklahoma State could easily be right there in the mix if they can beat Oklahoma. We've seen that happen more than once.
Of course, that game was crazy, 62-52. Jeez.
Yeah, and I guess that's what happens when a team has a head coach with a mullet.
Yeah, that's true.
What's up with that? He's the first person that I've seen.
Well, he's 40 years old, and he's a man.
Yeah, he is the first person in this 21st century I've seen intentionally grow a mullet.
Maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe he's just got a bad hairstylist.
Well, I mean, he's got hair, so I'll give him some credit. But
yeah, better not, more than I can say.
Yes, but anyway, that's what's going on. It's going to be an interesting ride to the rest of the way here for Georgia Tech, because now the pressure really is on. They have to win 2 of the next 3, or they'll be sitting home.
They will, absolutely.
And we, of course, want them to win all 3 and win a bowl game.
You got that right.
Get to what it would be
8-4.
8-9-4. Did they win? Well, 4.
8-4.
Okay. 8-4.
Remember, we had one canceled.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He's right. And actually, looking back, that could have been a loss.
It could have been. I mean, UCF is pretty good. Now, are they, Power 5 good? I don't know about that.
Yeah. In fact, Georgia Tech not going to play that game in Orlando could really hurt UCF from maybe getting into the playoff, which I know would be a stretch.
Well, I thought that the first playoff ranking came out and had them, I think it was around 15 or 16. So they're way down the list.
It's pretty much almost impossible. But, look, if you've got multiple teams with 2 losses and UCF had a win against like a Georgia Tech and whoever else they played, I mean, I'm no fan of these Power 5, Group of 5, whatever they're called, Group of 5 teams. But this is a team that was 0-12 2 years ago.
Well, yeah, it's a remarkable turnaround. And Scott Frost is going to, let's just say he's going to get paid this year. He is going to get paid. I don't know if it's going to be Nebraska or going to be Florida, but those 2 teams, you can bet, are coming after him hard.
Yeah. Anything else conference-wise before we go to our next break that you want to point out?
Clemson managed to put themselves back in the driver's seat, held off NC State 38-31. So they've done a pretty good job in terms of reasserting themselves. So I expect they'll be probably the conference champion after all said and done. I'm not sure that Miami has quite the horsepower to beat them. They've had a lot of luck, and they're starting to play with more confidence, but Clemson right now looks pretty dang good.
Yeah. And for the uniform nerds out there, I don't know what to make of the all-black Miami uniforms. Because I thought when Mark Richt was coaching down there last year, he said we're going to go to the traditional Miami look.
And they have for the most part. This is the first game that they haven't done that. So I guess it was, I don't know, everybody likes to do a special deal, and that gets the players all excited and gets the players excited.
And
it's
if I'm
good
not
for recruiting
mistaken,
and whatever.
From what I could see on TV, it looked like the place was pretty much full.
Yeah, which is unusual for them. But it was a big game for them. 10 versus 13. I'll say this much: that fan base doesn't show up except for the big games. But when they show up for the big games, they're pretty obnoxious and loud, just like you would want them to be.
And they got a big one this weekend with Notre Dame. So
yeah, I guarantee you that one will be full as well.
Yeah. All right. We'll take a timeout, come back for our final segment of BuzzLine, get a catch on what else is going on in GoJackets.com world. This is BuzzLine from Buffalo's Cafe, Cumming. Anything?
As well.
You want to put in a food order?
Not yet. I'll wait.
You can wait? Okay.
Yeah.
We're back on BuzzLine. Thank you for tuning us in via Facebook Live or one of our great stations across the state of Georgia. John Rawl with Jonathan Leifheit at GoJackets.com, and that is a CBS Sports Interactive website. Encourage you to go there for all the Georgia Tech information you need to be the smartest man at the tailgate and at the office, GoJackets.com. If you log on to GoJackets.com, not only do you find wonderful information about the team and the coaches and all the goodies there, but nobody else has the recruiting information that GoJackets.com offers. And on that front, Mr. Leifheit, publisher of GoJackets.com, there has been a little bit of news in the recruiting front.
Yeah, it's been. I think we probably should have covered it last show, but we didn't talk through that. Georgia Tech is now up to 16 commits. The latest one was a young man by the name of Julius Welschoff. He's actually out of Germany.
Gut, sehr gut.
Yes, have a little Wiener Schnitzel. I'll celebrate a little bit. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he is going to.
Is he German?
He is German.
Or is he the son of an American servant?
He is German. He played with, I think it was called PPI was the group player or something. I can't remember what they stand for. But he played with kind of a club, kind of like what, if you remember, Adam Gotsis played.
Yeah.
Okay, from Australia. He played. Yeah, there you go. Come on, you got to switch.
Are you sure he went from Austria or Australia?
He was Australia. Okay. So, and then picked up on that. He is 6'6", 248-pound defensive end. He'll probably have some work to do in terms of being able to come in and not contribute immediately, but very athletic. Has a really strong upside. I think this is a great player in terms of take a chance on and bring in. I think he could really pay some dividends at his size. So
how in the world is a kid from Germany, which I don't know his hometown? It just says Germany.
Yeah, I don't know what his town is.
How does he end up at the Institute?
So I think that organization that he's part of sent some film off to a few folks, and they pulled him. And Georgia Tech, a lot of schools were not willing to quite take a chance. Tech felt like, let's take a look at him. I think he looked at Iowa State as well. Was another school that he was looking at, and then Georgia Tech got him on a visit, and he really liked the academics. He also liked the fact that if you go back and look, Francis Callan, who actually came over to the U.S. from the UK, plus you had Adam Gotsis. They've got a reputation, so now Tech has kind of a reputation for being able to pull in international players and kind of elevate them up.
Okay, well, it's something that we've seen a lot of international players get a chance at the professional level, and if they get a chance to play college football, then more power to them.
Yep.
And it's good to see the football brand getting across the entire world regardless. I mean, we see more and more of these games played in London and in England and Mexico City.
Last year, Tech played Boston College in Ireland.
Yes, that's right. And maybe where in the world would you like to go see Georgia Tech play?
Actually, Germany would be kind of a cool place to go see it since I'm a little bit German.
Yeah. Leifheit. Not exactly an Italian name.
No, it's not Italian name, that's for sure.
All right, so good news there. And how are the Jackets doing with a home game coming up this weekend from a visit standpoint?
Well, this is kind of a slower time of the year in terms of that. The high school players are generally, they're getting close to playoffs now, so they're starting to wrap their seasons up, but they're playing, so they'll have probably more locals and that type of thing. We usually get a visit list ahead of time, and we'll post that on GoJackets.com. Depends on, we usually only look at the kind of the recruits of interest. They'll have any number of players that are there that may or may not be kind of on the radar per se.
We also want to go back to our comments question Facebook page. And Keith, by the way, in Fayetteville, Georgia, the mentor of the show, acknowledges that he got his coupon for the wings from Buffalo's Cafe, so you're quite welcome, sir. Donnie Dyer asks, is Jay Jones still with the team?
Absolutely. He is still there, and he would be one of your two backup quarterbacks. So we mentioned that Matthew Jordan was out and did not play. He didn't even make the trip, I don't believe. So had something happened to Taquan Marshall, Coach Johnson was very elusive as to who the backup would be behind Taquan if Matthew Jordan couldn't go. So one of those two players is Lucas Johnson. The other one is Jay Jones. He is still with the team. I've actually seen him at times lining up to take some field some punts, to maybe be a punt returner. But, yeah, he's only a redshirt freshman, so I think he'll get his shot. If he doesn't get it at quarterback, they'll find a place to get him on the field. He is too electric not to.
And let's say Georgia Tech gets behind an opponent someday big time and they can only pass. Is there a quarterback that's a better passer in the mix?
Probably is Lucas Johnson. I think he's the one that kind of had the best passing credentials out of high school. It doesn't necessarily mean he's the best kind of in college. We haven't seen enough of him to really know. But if I had to make a guess, I would probably put my money there. But I'm not sure Coach Johnson will put his money in the same place.
All right. Well, we appreciate all the comments and questions this week. Good stuff there from our BuzzLine audience. And again, we welcome you to visit our Facebook page, GT BuzzLine, if you have a question or comment for the show. And if you don't want to go to Facebook, if you're banned from Facebook, probably like you are, Jonathan.
No, I'm not banned from Facebook.
You can go to our telephone / text line, 803-816-1170, and you can get there via there to have us a question or comment for BuzzLine. All right, Georgia Tech takes on the Virginia Tech Hokies this week. It's going to be a 12:20 kickoff, toe meets leather at Grant Field, and we know that the Hokies are coming in after a loss. In fact, have they lost 2 in a row?
I'm trying to remember who they lost to prior to that.
Of course, they lost to
Clemson. That was earlier in the season, and then Miami.
This is the loss.
It is not 2 in a row. So they lost to Clemson. I think it was in September. So it's been
Military Appreciation Day. So we salute all of those who have worn and do wear the uniform of our country. And Georgia Tech will be facing off against this team. What do the Jacks need to do to come out successful?
Well, I think they need to first off fix their special teams. That has been a huge problem. Virginia Tech takes pride and known for what they do on special teams, so that would be the first one. The second one is find a way to stop the 2-minute offense, and third thing is hang on to the dead gumball.
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer.
Well, we hope they do exactly that. A win is so important. I think I can't imagine Georgia Tech struggling up in Durham at Wallace Wade Stadium.
Don't say that, John. Knock on wood right now.
Okay, I will. I said I can't imagine. I didn't say they won't.
You need to be more imaginative.
Yeah, you're true on that. But if they can win this week, at least I feel more comfortable with the Duke game.
I would agree with that.
So we look forward to that. And also want to remind everybody that if you're around, you won't be able to see the Georgia Tech basketball team in person this weekend. Usually there's a home game maybe on the eve before a a football game to start the season, but the Jackets are across the pond with Donald Trump.
Yeah, they are, and let's talk a little bit about that because there was some pretty big news this week with regard to the basketball team. Josh Okogie as well as Tadrick Jackson have been both held out of the game and held out of any games for the foreseeable future. Of course, Okogie had his injury, but both of them were actually found to have accepted some gifts, including apparel and some meals from a booster, not a booster, but a person who was actually, I know who it is. His name is Ron Bell, who was a kind of a fan of Coach Passner, and apparently they got sideways about something, and then the whole thing kind of blew up. So those two are currently under evaluation and investigation into the NCAA. Georgia Tech did self-report it, which will help the situation. But I would expect both of them to be out for probably anywhere from 4 to 8 games. Okay. I think Jackson is probably going to be, I think his infraction was less than 500, and Tadrick and then Okogie was less than 750. So that'll probably put them in the 4 and 8 game category respectively. I'm just guessing that's what the NCAA will do. But neither one of them made the trip out to China, so they were also held back from that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And that's going to make that game against UCLA that much harder because those were two big-time leaders on this team in terms of offense and just presence.
Yeah.
So
it's an 11:30 tip Friday, November 10th, and it's going to be 11:30 p.m. Eastern as the Jackets are all the way in Shanghai, China. I assume midday on Saturday when these teams are playing.
Yep.
UCLA, Georgia Tech basketball. So we appreciate all of you. If you can make it to Shanghai, great. If not, make it to Grantfield for the Jackets and the Hokies. For Jonathan Leifheit, I'm John Rawl signing off on this week's BuzzLine. We'll be back with you next week. And Mr. Leifheit, what do you have to say?
Go Jackets.
Bye-bye.